welcome to this edition of Transformation Thursdays. As always, we are excited to be here with you. We're also thrilled that you are here with us. And we're grateful. We're grateful, and we don't take this moment lightly, but we are grateful and thankful for it. We thank you for joining us. We look forward to our discussion on today. Today, we want to talk about playing hurt. Playing hurt. And again, I'm so excited that Dr. Christopher Chappell is joining me again today, and so we're excited about that. Last week, we left you with this story of a young lady who had gone through divorce, or rather was in the midst of a divorce. She was struggling on her job, and she was lying on her sofa contemplating suicide. And as she was contemplating suicide, then all of a sudden a word came to her spirit that caused her to start to move and to meet purpose. And ultimately, in doing so, she ended up being successful. But it didn't happen overnight. She got a word, she got a vision, and even though she was hurt, she had to learn how to play while being hurt. And so the message that I grabbed from her story is sometimes we have to learn how to play hurt. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 through 9, Paul is talking, and he is talking about a thorn that he has. He does not give us indication of what his thorn was. It could have been sickness. It could have been rejection. Could have been pain. Could have been disappointment. Could have been discouragement. We don't know what his thorn was. We do know that the Bible says God did not remove the thorn from him. But yet God said, "My grace is sufficient for you." And we also discovered that after which, Paul would write most of the New Testament. In addition to that, he would carry the gospel message throughout all the Middle East, Macedonia and Asia, and many other places. And today, we're still learning and studying Paul's writing. And he learned how to play hurt. In other words, he learned how to continue in purpose despite the pain, the heartache, the suffering. And so I want to talk tonight a little bit about learning how to play hurt. And I want to ask Christopher, what are your thoughts about playing hurt?
My thoughts of playing hurt, or about playing hurt, is that it's important that we continue. That's the idea for me, that we must continue regardless to the situation that we face.
Yeah.
It's a part of the process, because without the pain, we can't experience the other things that comes along with the excitement of winning, right? So it's just like a seed. It has to go through a process of degradation in order to get to the purpose in regeneration, right? The Bible says it's something like this. It says that a grain of wheat must fall to the ground and die.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the only way that it's able to produce more. The pain, the hurt that we feel is for the production of more. Now, I'm not saying that it's a fun process, but it's a necessary process to get us to really dial in and to focus and to lean on him, really, when we really think about it.
Right.
When we are leaning on him, regardless to the pain, then we know that we have avenues, we have an ally, we have hope in the situation. We have the necessary tools. But in order to win, we have to play. Look, I'm gonna put it like this. Anytime that we look at our favorite people in stories, every story has a character that has some type of challenge that they have to overcome.
Right.
Whether that's an issue of hurt, whether that's a nemesis, whether that's a pain, it's necessary. So we have to be able to play through the pain, because that's where the real star shines, when we play through it.
Yeah, I like that. You know, when you really just grabbing hold to what you just said, it's when we go through the pains of life, when we go through suffering, it's then when you discover just how strong you really are. You really don't know how strong you are until you go through it. You don't know how much you can do until you're pressed, until you're pushed. That's when you discover who you really are. And that's why when you look at Paul says in Romans chapter 5, Paul says it's suffering that produces endurance. And endurance produces character. And character produces hope. And then he goes on to say, and hope does not make ashamed, which means that when you are pushed, when you go through the pains of life, the sufferings of life, which are inevitable, because we all will go through something. When you go through those things, it brings out, as you just said, the shining star. It brings out the pearl, the diamond that's within us. But I love also what you said when you pointed out that when we go through suffering and pain and hurt, we realize that we have help. Not in ourselves, because the Bible says in and of ourselves we're insufficient. But with him, we are sufficient, that we are overcomers, that we're more than conquerors in him and through him. And so when we're going through, we learn how to depend on a power and a source that's greater than us. That's the power. That's the power of playing hurt. And if we keep reading, Paul will give us that answer later on, where he says, because when I'm weak, that's where I recognize my strength. And that's where I recognize where my strength comes from, when I am weak. But as long as I feel like I'm strong, meaning that I'm totally dependent on myself, then I always keep falling. But as long as I learn how to lean on him, that other power that's within us, that's when my true strength begins to blossom. And I begin to blossom. And I begin to emerge. Not that I'm not broken, but I emerge stronger.
You know, that makes me think about that portion right before that. When he said, I pleaded 3 times. I pleaded 3 times to have this thorn removed.
Right.
But notice the thorn had a purpose, right? It was there to buffer him so he wouldn't be conceited and all these other things, depending on what translation you read, right? But nevertheless, he did something that was important that was talked about before by you. He had to make a pivot. So when we pivot, knowing that our pivot will bring about a profit for our lives, then we can get to the promise. But if we don't pivot because of the pain, then we stay stuck in that same situation. So it's really, and a lot of times when we are like playing hurt, or we're experiencing hurt, not necessarily playing hurt, but when we're experiencing hurt, whether that's emotional hurt, whether that's physical hurt, whatever it may be, there's something that is called, the word is perseveration. And that means that a person literally gets stuck on a thought or emotion, and they or action, so they repeat something over and over again.
I like
right. So they begin to perseverate on an idea that I'm hurting, or I'm in pain and I can't move forward. They begin to stay stuck on the problem and never move towards or pivot towards the solution.
Right.
But in this text, what we see is say, I pleaded. And in some versions, it says it like this. He says, I made overwhelming, I pleaded to the point of exhaustion, depending on what version of it you read, right? That wasn't just a simple, like, Lord, you'll bless me. Like, you'll take this away. Like, he was in this thing. I need this removed, right? But he had to deal with it.
Right. Right.
And once he got a word about it, then he was able to make the adjustments to do something with what he had.
Yeah.
And that's
I like that. I like that last point. And so that reminds me. So I've been going through this book by Florence Shen. The book is called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It's an old book. And she says literally almost the same thing you just said. But she says our outcomes are the results of our thoughts, our beliefs, and our actions. Right? So if when we're going through hurt and pain and disappointment and discouragement, and all those other things, when we're going through those things, and if we focus on those things and focus on that negativity and that hurt and that pain, then we will stay stuck right there, just as you pointed out. But in essence, she's saying to us that we have to change our thoughts. And that's why Paul says, think on these things that are good and of virtue and positive. Think on your purpose. Think on how you're moving. Think on how you're going through. Don't focus on the negativity. Don't focus on the hurt, but focus on that. I think about basketball players, and I'm always reminded of Michael Jordan. I don't know if you remember that game he played in the playoff that one year. He had the flu. He was throwing up. He was dehydrated, and he came out and he scored all these points and just lit it up. But he was sick. He was hurt, but he lit it up. Why? How? Because he did not focus on the pain. He focused on the outcome. What was the outcome? Winning the game. That's the outcome. The outcome is us winning. It's operating in purpose. It's us winning, and we are ensured that we win. But we have to play. And that's why the Bible says, do not get weary in well-doing. Because at just the right moment, at just the right time, you will receive the reward. But if you don't pivot, if you get weary in the hurt, weary in the disappointment, in the discouragement, in the loss, in the lack, if you get weary and stay right there and stay stuck, then you'll never get the reward. You'll never get the outcome that you want. You'll find yourself in the same place.
I'm going to say it like this. Pain grooms us for growth. And growth accelerates us to greatness. You can't be great if you're not willing to play through the pain. Martin Luther King said it like this. The real or the ultimate measure of man is not where he stands in moments of convenience and comfort, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I would expound on that and say where he stands in the moments of emotional brokenness, where he stands in the moments of despair, where he stands in the moment of loneliness.
Yeah.
Because all of those things come along with playing hurt. But when we realize that his grace is sufficient for whatever situation that we go through, then we'll know and have assurance that we'll make it. But what is this grace? The grace is his presence. The grace is his power. The grace is his peace. When you have those things, you're able to play hurt. Because his grace not only provides those things, but it provides support, sustenance, and safety. You have the safety to be vulnerable in those moments. He understands where we are. And because he understands where we are and who we are, he helps us get back up and fight the fight.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I love it. That is so powerful for me when, and I think you expressed it very well. His grace is about his presence, his love, his power. And we can keep playing despite the hurt, despite the pains, the disappointments of life, the rejections, the sickness, the loss, the grief. We can play hurt, and we can fulfill our destiny and the promises we can have if we learn how to play hurt. On this Transformation Thursday, I want you to affirm with me that I will learn how to play hurt. That I will move through. That I will win despite the pain, despite the heartache, despite the disappointments, despite the rejection, despite the losses, despite the grief, or even the lack. I will win. That's our thought for tonight on this Transformation Thursday.